Jimmy Smith will tell you it's time for Bay Area baseball, past, present, and future. We're back, Tim Haller and I, Bay Area baseball, past, present, and future. And Timmy, first of all, I'm Ralph Tyko. Anybody out there really gives a rat's ass when we have Tim Haller and our guest, who is the trivia maven who has attended the most Sabra conventions ever, 43 conventions. His name is Ronald Liebman. Tim Haller, meet Ronald Liebman.
How you doing, Ron? Good to have you on the show this evening.
Very good, Tim. Nice to meet you on the air.
Yeah.
I guess I came to Ralph Tyko's attention because of my trivia page.
Right.
Well, I'll be quite honest with you, Ron. When it comes to sabermetrics, I am a kindergartner. I am very, I'm still very old school. There's going to have to be a lot of convincing for me to completely buy into all of this, and I'm hoping that you have.
Well, myself, I didn't say I'm into sabermetrics. Saber is the Society for American Baseball Research.
Oh, there you go. See, that tells you how astute I am. So, okay, so we're in good shape.
Tell us about that society. That's big in the baseball world, and give us an idea what that's about, Ronald.
Well, in the 1960s, there were people all over the country who were baseball hobbyists. They were all compiling statistics, and nobody knew about each other. People were compiling the same statistics. They didn't know who to go to, how to get them published. And then a gentleman in Washington named Robert Davids, who used to write for the Sporting News, he decided to have an organization to try to bring all these people together. Remember, this is before the Facebook and this is before the Internet thing. So he put out advertisements in the Sporting News and in other places and in Cooperstown to try to start this organization. So he thought we'd be lucky to get 200 people. We have about 7,000 in the organization.
Wow.
A lot of people were just dedicated fans and hobbyists, and they didn't know who each other existed. And maybe 20 people compiled the same stats, which was a duplication of effort. So Bob Davis deserves the credit. I did not know. I knew of Bob Davis from his writing, but I did not know him personally when he started the organization. But the minute he started the organization, of course, he reached out to everybody who had any kind of name or reputation. So he reached out to me, of course. So this was a natural organization for me.
Whoa, nice. Well, I'm a baseball fan. Tell me about your first games. What really got you going on it?
Well, I had an uncle who was deeply into statistics. He never published anything, and he didn't even write too much, but he knew a lot about the great players of all time. And I had a mother who was deeply into the Brooklyn Dodgers. It was a combination of that. An uncle with stats and a mother with the Brooklyn Dodgers. They got me interested in it. But I seem to have certain skills that I got from birth, memory skills. I'm neurologically impaired. I have trouble at times concentrating and with coordination, and I'm unable to drive a car. But the way I was born, my memory was fantastic, way above the average. So baseball statistics and trivia had a lot to do with memory. So that had to do with it. I could never drive a car. I could never do a lot of different things because of my impairment. So with an unusual neurological thing, a whole lot of things worked out together. Even when the Brooklyn Dodgers moved, though, I was so hooked into baseball, I remained hooked into it.
Wow.
That's an interesting story. That's really interesting.
For the first 7 years I followed baseball, it was the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Did you remain a Dodger fan, or were you angry at them? Because they moved on me, or the Giants moved on me, and I had a lot of mixed emotions over the years, still do.
I have a combined rooting interest for the Dodgers and the Mets.
Okay. So who did you root for between when the Dodgers left and when the Mets were formed? I'm just curious.
Dodgers. I didn't have any real. I wasn't really a Met fan until Gil Hodges came around in '68 and he won the title in '69.
Oh, okay.
I was just in the beginning. I was a pure Dodger fan, but then when Hodges came along and the Mets won in '69, I became a Met fan too. So I root for them both. And if the two of them are in the playoffs or something, I'm kind of uncomfortable.
Okay. I'm add to the fact that you run another site on Facebook, which is called the Gil Hodges Hall of Fame, should be in the Hall of Fame site. Tell me about that, and tell me in a paragraph or so why you think, and I definitely agree with you, that he should be in the Hall of Fame. You tell me why, in your words.
Well, he was the outstanding first baseman of his era. He was an outstanding fielder and an outstanding hitter. His career was shortened a little bit by knee trouble, so he didn't quite reach a few goals. But his statistics, in my view, were certainly good enough. And if they were a little short, his character helped make up for it. And then when he won the 1969 World Series, that was sort of the cherry on the cake. However, it's the sabermetric guys, in many cases, who were against him. And when he was eligible for the Hall of Fame, it was a 12-man committee, sometimes a 16-man committee. There was one man on the committee who for no good reason, was viciously against him. And that man blocked him. And I know this authoritatively. Ted Williams, the great hitter.
Okay. Right.
Williams didn't like it. Both men were managers of Washington at one time, and Hodges was great. It was more regarded by the fans than Williams.
Right. That I've heard that over the years, and that's kind of a petty thing to keep a man out of the Hall of Fame. I also heard that Earl Weaver had a lot to do with it on one way or the other. He was kind of angry about the shoe policy.
Well, if not for Ted Williams, Weaver didn't get onto this until very late in the proceedings. The idea is when Hodges was eligible with the writers for 15 years, and then he went to the Veterans Committee. So he kept missing year after year. Then, in the 15th year, he was eligible with the Veterans Committee. The Veterans Committee could stay on it forever, a candidate. They picked Mazeroski instead of Hodges. So they disbanded the committee, and they got some new committees. And the new committees are determined not to pick anybody who's a player. The only people they pick are managers and umpires and other people. So they've picked two players. They've picked two players in the last 15 years. So the deck is heavily stacked against Hodges. And the two players they picked were Joe Gordon and Ron Santo, both of whom were deceased. Of course, Hodges is long deceased. But anyway, they're not picking any players from that era. That's like with me in one Sabre committee. They don't want to give me an award because they don't like me. So they gave awards to dead people, to non-entities, and one of the committees, they stopped giving awards altogether because they were not going to give more people awards ahead of me, so they just don't give an award to avoid me.
Well, why would
that's a big problem. I haven't saved it. They're not going to give me an award. They give almost anybody an award, but not me. But anyway, that's another stupid. Something similar to Hodges.
Why do you suppose they don't give you an award? I'm just curious. Why you, Ronald Liebman, not getting an award at Newtown?
I've come up with a lot of corrections and revisions, and they think I'm making up the statistics and embarrassing people.
Oh, okay. Well, you're not.
They've gotten over. Well, anyway, the people who think that I've basically blocked on Facebook, and I've avoided. What bothers me is as though these people are getting awards and I'm not. The people who are making trouble for me are getting awards and I'm not. But anyway, I still have a very, very strong reputation, much stronger than a lot of the people who are getting the awards.
And that's what I've heard, and that's what I appreciate. What I'd like you to do, I don't know if you realize, and I think I made it clear before, this is a Bay Area baseball show, and I want you to give my partner and I some trivia. Let's see. Hit us with.
Well, most of the questions I jotted down a while ago are not Bay Area questions. Do I have to limit myself to Bay Area?
No, but you give me at least one or two from the Bay Area.
Oh, sure. There is some. All right. I won't give you any 10 or 15-part questions or anything like that. Just either one guy or a few guys. I have my trivia page every day, and Monday through Saturday, the usual procedure is I put two questions on. One of them is a question that's one or two parts. The other one is a question that's three or more parts. And I monitor the answers. The questions are of varying difficulties. Some of them almost anybody could get. Others are expert-type questions. But with 15,000 people on the page and a lot of people looking them up, there aren't too many that are not eventually answered.
Right.
I usually will leave the question on 24 hours, and by that time somebody, in many cases, will have looked it up. But the question, the page is a very, very popular page. In fact,
and we're gonna
I was sort of censured in Sabre for making up stats and everything, but because of my page, they basically, it elevated my reputation to some degree, which might be a prelude to winning an award.
Well, I hope so. I mean, you've waited this long. Will you say something like, hello, gorgeous, when it finally happens? Probably not.
I'd say, what a relief. I'd say something like that, I would say.
Oh, okay. Because,
I remember Susan Lucci, she lost the Emmy about 20 years in a row, then she won it, and she almost fainted when she got it. I don't think I would faint, but I would be stunned.
Because All My Children was a little corny, if I remember. But didn't stop me from watching it because it came on right after the Gong Show. No, actually, that's not true. Ryan's Hope came on after the Gong Show.
Most people think that I have a much better chance of getting an award than I think because the board keeps turning over every few years. So the board turns over, there's younger people going on the board.
Some area trivia questions that will earn the Zigzag Man Award, and Tim Haller will sign off on it.
Yeah, and I have probably the greatest stumper of all, Ron. So you better come with it. I'm just telling you right now.
Well, if it's a ridiculously tough question, I likely would not get it.
Well,
I don't know about that. You seem to be quite astute. I'm going to pose this one right off the bat.
Okay.
Who was the first left-handed batter to hit a home run off of Whitey Ford in a World Series? And what year was that?
Was that Duke Snider?
Negative.
Pardon me?
No?
Negative.
No.
I'm guessing Snider, because Snider hit one home run off Ford. Then it must
Yeah,
have
but
been
then I got to guess Willie Mack.
Negative.
It would have been Willie Mays never hit a World Series homer. Willie Mays never hit a World Series homer.
No,
he didn't.
Mack, I said.
Willie
McCovey.
Tom Haller hit a home run off of Whitey Ford in the 1962 World Series. The first left-handed batter he faced to hit a home run off of him in a World Series.
I love it.
Then I have incorrect information because I thought it was Duke Snider, but all right. I can't look it up now. My books are in my other apartment.
Look it up.
Well, no, you don't have to look this one up because the man knows it was Tom Haller. I have a feeling I would bet my favorite bong that it was Tom Haller that hit that home run. But then again, I asked Ronald Liebman off the air if he remembered Timmy's uncle, and he certainly did, Bill Haller, the umpire. Didn't you, Ron?
Yeah, well, I'm into brothers and fathers and sons and all that stuff. I'm a lot of that's a large part of my trivia. Brothers and sons. And asking who the first black player was.
Had a terrific son. He didn't make the major leagues. He played minor league ball, but that's not how you judge a person. That's not how I judge a person.
Ron, one thing we don't want to do is go through my statistics, that's for sure.
Well, I judge a person by how their heart is and how other people, what other people think of them, and how they treat other people. So Timmy not only made the major leagues that counts, he's in the frickin' Hall of Fame. So
well, that's very kind of you, Ralph. And you know, my question for Ron, another question I have for you, Ron, is having such a vast knowledge of these statistics, and some of them are pretty, obscure for the average fan, because I consider myself just an average baseball fan. I grew up in a household where my dad played in the major leagues, but statistics were not always, talked about. They were more. My dad had a humanitarian type of view towards ball players. What kind of person was he, as well as what kind of a ball player was he? Spoke of guys like Duke Snyder and Ken Boyer and Gil Hodges, of people of great content of character, as well as being exceptional baseball players. Where do you draw your line when it comes to here you are on the bandwagon for Gil Hodges to get into the Hall of Fame, and I am completely I'm completely on board.
My whole adult life for that. That's not a new cause for me, right?
Right, but I mean, what also do you factor? You have to look at the Hall of Fame, and it's always discussed about what type of character some of these ball players had. Obviously, we know Cobb wasn't well liked. There were some other ball players, their behaviors, etc.
They have tremendous stats that could override the character to some degree, but if the stats are more of a borderline nature, the character sort of would have to count. In other words, to have some justification to putting a person in, right?
Okay, so that being said, give me your take on the steroid era ball players, guys that were using illegal performance-enhancing drugs like Bonds, like Clemens, like Palmeiro. What is your stance on these guys if ultimately they get elected into the Hall of Fame?
I would put them in ultimately. I'll be a little lenient on that. The fact that they haven't gotten in so far, that's all right. But, I mean, within the next few years, I would put them in.
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with that as well. I really believe that in that era, those guys were the ones that shined. And that's a given. We also know, and throughout the history of baseball, there have been other illegal drugs used. I know in the 60s, greenies, 70s, greenies, that was a big popular thing with a lot of ball players. And they feel that was an enhancement to their performance as well. And some of those guys, several of them, are probably in the Hall of Fame.
So there are two. You're comparing at Tim, apples to oranges. Greenies get you, pep pill. Sometimes it can really hurt you, not help you. What they're doing was they changed the chemical makeup of their bodies. However, am I right? But
like Bond's got a big head, he got big feet.
But at the end of the day, they still have to square up a ball. They have to hit a round ball with a round bat square.
They're playing against pitchers who may have enhanced themselves now. I've come full circle on this thing. I think now that you take it as an era. Remember, when it first came down, I was mad because we couldn't fairly compare Ted Williams to Barry Bonds, for instance.
Yes.
You couldn't compare, whereas you used to be able to compare Ted Williams to Ty Cobb and say, well, and argue, and it's all subjective. There was nothing, wow, you could do, that guy's definitely better. No, they're still arguing Ruther Mays to this day. But you couldn't argue Barry Bonds to Ted Williams. Well, guess what? People have pointed out to me, Peter Golenbach and others, that you really couldn't make a fair comparison for eras even before speed and performance-enhancing drugs.
Right, like the people before 1920, there was a dead ball, so they didn't hit too many home runs.
The dead ball era, they weren't playing with blacks on the same fields. It was impossible to make. You couldn't compare Cap Anson to Pie Traynor to any of the others. So for that reason, I say, you look at it and you say, who did the best? Everybody may have been doing it, may not have been doing it. At this point, what the hell? If you can't have a Hall of Fame without Barry Bonds and Clemens in it, and Shoeless Joe Jackson, and for that matter, Pete Rose, because and I hedge on that because you can't bet on baseball. But
Rose and Jackson, I would definitely put in. I would say yes to those two. Particularly Jackson is long dead already, and Rose, even people who are against him, it's been so long already. I would put him in.
No,
he's the tough hit guy ever.
You can't in his lifetime because he was such a denier and a filthy liar about it all.
I don't think he will get in his lifetime. I would pick him, but I don't feel he'd get in. But he'll have trouble getting 75% of the vote at any time from any committee.
Right. Oh, no. He's not. He won't even come up.
And another factor, I don't think that we talk about this often, and it's an interesting point of subject, and that is,
it's one of my least favorite subjects, by the way, steroids. To talk about steroids is one of my least favorite. Right.
Yeah, it isn't a fun thing to talk about, but it's real and it happened. Now, my thing is also one thing that isn't very often discussed. That is the fact that we're talking about these different eras, the dead ball era, et cetera. We can go on and on. Different periods of time the game was played, the different way the game was played, approached, et cetera. But we have to remember, even in the 50s and the 60s, there were only 16 major league teams, 8 clubs in each league.
Yes, I know.
Today we have 30 clubs, and if I'm not mistaken, that leads to saturation. The quality or the abilities of the athletes today, how would they have measured up to the guys in the 60s? It's a good question.
Also, a lot of young people today, particularly blacks, are not interested in baseball. They go into other sports. Like the percentage of American blacks is much lower than it was, right? So I would not favor, anytime soon, I would not favor a further expansion. That would saturate the thing further. That would make a even weaker thing.
It would. It absolutely would. And not only that, I think we're losing a lot of great athletes to not just like the NBA or even to the NHL and their growth of popularity, but we're losing them to tennis, and we're losing them to other types of activities that at one time in our lifespan there weren't that many diversions. It was either baseball, football, or basketball. Well, today they have a whole plethora of different sports to go to, and they find greater enjoyment in doing that than going out to the sandlot on a Saturday morning and playing with their friends in the neighborhood.
I know there are a lot of minor league caliber players playing in the majors today.
Well, let me just say this: we have the international community that contributes, so that I think that. And our population is twice what it was in the 50s. So there's no trouble getting talent. We also have better diets, performance-enhancing drugs notwithstanding. We better training facilities, better training techniques. Kids are playing more. On the downside, kids are throwing out their arms when they're 16 years old.
It's amazing, though, that so many more with all the conditioning, so many more pitchers, though, are throwing out their arms, and they're having this Tommy John surgery. And some of the multiple Tommy John surgeries, the same pitcher.
Well, Timmy, you played ball. Could you address that? Are people bulking up to the point with whatever they're using or not using that it's too much for their tendons, their muscle mass is too much for their tendons?
Well, it's mainly the pitchers I was referring to. The pitchers were getting injured, and Tim Haller wasn't a pitcher.
No, he wasn't.
No, but that being said, though, I have to say, I know that and what I don't know the specifics, but I do understand that not all things are understood when it comes to what effect do these drugs have on the body. Because some guys are having long-term effects. They're having kidney failures. They're having brain tumors that are coming from nowhere. They're having these types of things. But I will say this, and it's something that isn't really even discussed. Coaches today, when the kids are just young, they're in junior high and high school, and they get on these travel teams, these coaches are telling these kids to throw the ball as hard as they can. They're telling them to, throw different types of pitches that put different strains on the ligaments and et cetera. All the physio aspects of the arm. Here's the thing. Nobody really discusses that. Look at how baseball is trending now to, you throw your starting pitcher's pitching only 5 or 6 innings, and then you're going to a bullpen, and usually there's 3 or 4 guys in that bullpen that are throwing 95 miles an hour or better. And so what they're establishing now, or trying to establish, is we want to get these guys to throw as hard as they can for the shortest period of time that they can, and they're putting this uncalculable amount of stress on their throwing arms, and that's why we're seeing such a vast, greater number of arm injuries. Because they're really
in the old ways. In the old days, I used to like it better when a lot of pitches would go 9 innings.
And that's what I loved about the game then too. I really thought there was a lot more involved in terms of strategy. There was less emphasis put on bullpen pitching and even closers. So now they just want to get the most out of somebody that they possibly can, and when he blows out his arm, we're going to bring the next guy right in, and they're going to do the same thing to that person. And nobody really talks about that very often. They really don't bring that up in conversation, but that trend is very obvious. It's something that's happening, and I feel badly for some of these kids because they're being told, hey, if you can throw 96 miles an hour and you can sustain that for, 6 or 8 or 9 outs, you're going to be in the major leagues and you're going to make millions of dollars. Well, it's not as severe, it's not critical, but it's almost the same mentality that coaches and management are pointing, in terms of the concussion thing with football. We're going to get everything we can out of this person until they blow up, and that's it, and then we're going to bring the next one right along until they do the same thing again, and so it goes. Nobody really talks about that very much.
I could tell you
amazing. Nolan Ryan pitched 27 years, Tommy John 26 years. You're not going to see much of that kind of thing anymore.
Well, that's true, but I would question what Nolan Ryan might have enhanced his the last 5 years, 6 years of his career with. And
nobody knows that, right?
Nobody knows that for sure, but
right.
Hey, give me a break. There's a certain physiological thing when you reach your mid-30s, you reach your early 40s, there's a decline that's been going on forever. But that notwithstanding, everybody in his era was subject to the same thing. Here's my thing. What really gets me and shows the cruelty of it all, they'll tell a kid, you can throw as hard as you want, because if you blow your arm out, you got Tommy John surgery, and there's an 80% chance now you'll come back stronger than you were. But what they don't tell you is that there is a year plus of incredibly painful, psychologically painful, because when you're playing ball, you're at that age, your whole ego is wrapped up in ball. So, I mean, you're in your body. Everything, it's not what you have in your brain, it's what you have in your body.
And I couldn't agree with you more, Ralph. I mean, wanting to be, my aspirations and my attempts in playing ball, it absorbed me. It was everything. It was my essence. It was everything that I could dream of.
You can go through a year now, and you'll be fine. Downplaying, you just recruit. It's just a year.
But many pitchers need the surgery a second time or a third time. Or
who have rehabbed. Timmy, you've had friends who have rehabbed injuries like that. Talk about what they go through, what an 8-hour day for a player rehabbing a Tommy John surgery might be like.
Well, what I've witnessed is it's hours every day doing different types of exercises, strengthening exercises, doing everything that they can to rebuild the surgically repaired area of the elbow or even the shoulder. God forbid it's a shoulder issue, because the way they do this Tommy John thing right now, it's like rolling out of bed. They get it done, and they're, and a year later they're throwing again. But these guys have to work so hard and so long at just rehabilitating themselves. They in essence have taken a tendon out of their leg and putting it into their elbow so that they can, throw a baseball.
Not all peaches and cream, right?
And they have to acclimate to that. But the psychological aspect of it, just the hard point of your mind you're obsessed with getting healthy again and getting an opportunity again to get out and perform and play. It's emotionally, psychologically as grueling, if not more, than the physical aspect of it. But they're spending a minimum of 8 hours a day doing things to rehabilitate over the course or a span of 9 months to 12 months to get back into a position where they can start throwing again competitively. So
teams often make them wait 15 months in many cases.
Right.
Yes.
Teams are now waiting them wait longer just
knowing
to be on
along
the
the way if they're ever going to be able to come back to where they were. It's always in the back of their head, and it's devastating. And they downplay that stuff. And I think ball players have always been treated like chattel. I think pure and simply, the old myth where in the 50s those players would have played for nothing. The books have been written. No, they had unions going. They were trying to form unions. Minimum wage. They were paying guys $6,000 a year to play, and kept you under contract, kept you in the minors for your whole career. If you had a guy ahead of you, owned you like chattel, and the owners would like to nothing more than to do that again. Absolutely, they'd like to go back to the way it was, and I may have talked about this with you last week. This is a football owner said this. Jerry Jones. Did we talk about Jerry Jones last week, Timmy?
I believe it was last week, Ralph, yes.
Okay. Where the football owner comes out after all the court cases, all the settlements have been made with the players to treat people with head injuries, and certainly some blame was taken for the NFL. Should have been. Jerry Jones comes out and says, no, these figures are wrong. We're misjudging. We haven't yet found out accepted the fact that these injuries could happen. And it's the same in baseball, one way or the other. Once you stop producing, the door swings one way only. And it's
right, and I think we're seeing that, especially here in the Bay Area. We're certainly identifying that with a guy like Tim Lincecum. He's lost his stuff. He overthrew for a short period of his early career.
I hope he makes his way back with some team.
Well, I would like to see that happen too, but I think that he's blown himself out. And because of his mechanics and everything else, his lower body now is compromised. He had to have the hip surgery, everything else because of his stature, his size, the way he was instructed and taught, and then the repetitive motion over and over and all of that, such an unnatural delivery.
Yeah, that
right.
delivery. I'm surprised that he got 5-6 great years. The guy, 3 rings, a couple of Cy Youngs.
And you know what I'm doing? I'm comparing him to a lot of these guys that I'm seeing that have somewhat similar circumstances. I'm going to refer to a guy like Jake Peavy. He's now gone into sort of a more of a mediocre period of his career, but when he was first coming up and he was with San Diego, the guy was unhittable. And because of the stress and the strain of his mechanics and the physical output he had to do just to throw the ball over a period of time, it took its toll. And when we look back at, and even in the eras like early 80s, 70s, 60s, and beyond, and before all of that, these pitchers had sound, solid mechanics, and they would pitch 8 or 9 innings an outing, and they never had any of these physical issues. And that's what's puzzling to me. I don't get that. I don't understand. And I think a lot of that has to be questioned as far as the coaching and what these kids are being told today and how they should approach their game as opposed to longevity. It's now about how much can we get out of them as soon as possible. And
all right, another sad situation was Brandon Webb. He had several outstanding years in a row, and he won 22 games one year. Then the next year, he hurt his arm on opening day. He never made it back to the majors, never. He pitched a few years in the minors and semi-pro ball, so after about 4 years of trying to come back, he quit altogether. But imagine that, a 22-game season, and he was only in his late 20s. Then the next year, he hurts himself in his opening day start, and he never makes it back. It's a very sad story.
Yes, absolutely.
It is. It is.
It's
absolutely.
Trivia, Ronald, because time is running short.
Chris Carpenter of the Cardinals never made it back either. That's a sad one.
Yes, it is.
He suddenly got hurt, and he never made it back. And Roy Halladay had a pretty decent career, but it stopped more or less suddenly. He suddenly hurt his arm and couldn't get back, although he was already in his 30s. But
right, he was only 34, though. He was only 34, I believe, when he retired.
Yes, he may have a chance to be considered for the Hall of Fame because he got to 203 wins. Nowadays, you got to get to 200 to be considered. So, but Halladay looked like he would win at least 250 games, maybe 300. But anyway, it's sad the way these guys they suddenly end. And meanwhile, Jim Palmer, when he was young, he was out almost 2 years because of arm surgery. Then he won 20 games 8 of the next 9 years. He was the reverse. That before Tommy John surgery, before anything, he somehow was able to recover from arm surgery. He was the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, he was, and that's that 1% of 1% that actually, is able to come back from that.
Just like Nolan Ryan pitched 27 years. That's a real rarity for somebody to last 27 years, particularly when you're a power pitcher.
Right, exactly. And I think a lot of along the same lines of Steve Carlton, too, how long he stretched his career out. And those guys had extremely, their work ethic was just beyond any concept of what is normal or natural. Ryan and Carlton, they both just pushed themselves to the absolute limit. And they were able to have those long, productive careers. Ron, I want to know.
Last few years, Carlton was lousy in his last few years. He just hung on, whereas Ryan was at least a mediocre to decent pitcher his last few years. But Carlton, I think, was something like 26 and 51 for his last 4 years. That's not good pitching.
He finished with the Giants, if I'm not mistaken. I know he was out here for a while.
Yeah, he was.
He finished with the Giants. He pitched for the Giants. He got his 4,000th strikeout, and then the Giants released him. And then he pitched for a couple of other teams: the White Sox, the Indians, the Twins.
The Twins, right? Yeah. I want to ask you, Ron, with your wealth of knowledge and your understanding of baseball and statistics, and your love and passion for the game, setting aside Gil Hodges, who was your favorite player to watch, not only as from a statistics standpoint, but who is the one guy that you identified with or you liked the most?
Well, in my youth, except for the Brooklyn Dodgers, my favorite player was definitely Stan Musial of the Cardinals. He was a real favorite of mine. Willie Mays, by the way, was a favorite also. But Stan Musial was a particular favorite because of his consistency from year to year.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good pick. I mean, that's a pretty good guy to want to be your favorite player. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Mine was Julio Gauthier.
Mine was Zoyo Varshaya.
No, yours was Tom Haller. You can't fool me, young man.
Vassali's had maybe the worst career of anybody who ever won the MVP. I didn't think he would have deserved it the year he won it, and his career was basically a mediocre career.
Yeah. Those Twins were remarkable in '65. I really.
Oh yes, they were. They were a very good team. I thought they'd win. Well, they did win 2 division titles later on, with some of the same guys in 69 and 70. And if I were listing the 10 guys who are not in the Hall of Fame, who I think belong, I would put in both Oliva and Cott from those teams. They're different types of careers. What?
I would absolutely
put in Cott. Cott's long overdue. But Oliva,
Oliva was dominant for a shorter period. Cott was more consistent for a longer period. They both had their attributes. Anyway, Cott is missed by 2 votes in the last 2 elections each. And Oliva, the last election, missed by 1 vote. So these guys are coming very, very close.
Right.
But the fact is, they're not picking anybody. If you're missed by 1 or 2 votes, you're still not in. They've only picked the committees, other than the sports writers, only Joe Gordon and Ron Santo. After 2001, that's not enough. They should pick more guys. So if they pick more, to be Hodges, Oliva, and one guy who I strongly favor, Louis Tiant. He was just as good as Hunter and a lot of other guys, but he was a Latin Negro, and he didn't have the postseason background. He couldn't speak good English. Tiant, I feel, definitely belongs. In a lot of stats, he outranks Hunter, he outranks Drysdale, and a lot of stats, Tiant belongs, in my view.
Right.
I don't know what you think of Tiant.
Well, I think he was one of those just missed guys. There used to be no disgrace to be a Gus Bell, just a really good, solid, a Roy McMillan, good, solid ball player.
They were not anywhere near Hall of Fame, Gus Bell and Roy McMillan.
No, but they were I would say this, Roy McMillan, if Pee Wee Reese is in the Hall of Fame, Roy McMillan might be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, it's Bill Mazeroski's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, Bill Mazeroski, as wonderful as he was as a defensive second baseman, his numbers are pale in comparison to those like guys that probably should be in there, i.e. Jeff Kent, some of these other guys that, from an offensive statistical standpoint.
Oh, a whole load of guys are more worthy than Mazeroski, but that doesn't necessarily mean that because Mazeroski made it, you can put 20 other guys in. Because if a mistake is made, it doesn't mean to weaken it. Kent, I would feel, but it belong eventually.
A mistake could be made, but Mazeroski was the second baseman defensively in his era.
But I didn't feel he had the numbers, right?
He didn't have the numbers, but he didn't have the offensive numbers. And there are no defensive numbers that can quantify a player's career defensively.
Ironically, now the sabermetric people are developing more defensive numbers.
They are indeed, and maybe on another show you could explain that to us and give us some understanding of how that works.
Let me. What you were talking about the Tommy John surgery. John himself, I would feel, belongs in the Hall of Fame. He has more wins than anybody who didn't win 300. He has 288 in his career. So John is not in, and the fact that they've only picked 2 players from this century in the committees in all these years, unless the committees get active, none of these guys are going to make it. Maybe Oliva, like he was 1 vote short, or was 2 votes short, but hardly anybody's going to make it. Name the only pitcher who's in the Hall of Fame who had Tommy John surgery. That's a familiar question. You might be able to get it.
The only pitchers in the Hall of Fame who had
only one pitcher is in the Hall of Fame who had Tommy John surgery.
That's a good question.
You got me. Stumped me.
You got me too.
Who is it?
John Smoltz.
Oh, that's right.
In fact, when he got it, he became a reliever for a few years because his arm wasn't that strong, so he became a reliever. Then he went back to starting. But when he was a reliever, he was one of the best relievers in baseball.
Whoa,
John Smoltz. I see Smoltz a lot. He's on the MLB network. He's one of their analysts, both in-game and in the studio.
He does a really good job. And then finally, I think that here's another one of those white elephant in the room questions, Ron. And this comes from a guy that grew up in the game, played the game, is genetically connected to the actual playing of the game. Why are sports writers the only ones that are allowed to vote for guys to go into the Hall of Fame? Why isn't there a distinguished committee of ex-ball players great or mediocre that can also participate in the voting process for Hall of Fame election?
Well, they set it up that way in 1936 when a lot of teams didn't have announcers, or most of the announcers they had were recreators, and the sports writers got themselves a strong union. And anytime anybody wanted to put anybody else in, they threatened to boycott the vote and not to vote, so baseball backed down.
Yeah.
The writers' union put their muscle, and they say they want to vote only them. But in 1936, it was only going to differ from today. Most teams, if they had an announcer, he was often doing recreations instead of things, and it was a different type of world in 1936 than today.
Yeah, it is. Reagan was one of those guys who did recreation.
Today we have Internet people, although Internet people, a few Internet people who do a lot of work on the Internet, maybe about 10 of them, who are Internet sports writers, have qualified for the Baseball Writers Association, but standards are tough for them. They had to keep covering a team every day on the Internet. Standards are tough.
Right. So what qualifies sports writers and sports writers only to be the final judge and jury when it comes to these guys being memorized or memorable in the history of the game? Why are they exclusively?
Because that's the way it was done in 1936, and now they have a strong union, and they don't want to give up any of their power. It doesn't make sense. Like Vin Scully could never vote. He's much more of an expert than most of the sports writers.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
The sports writers have just been pulling a lot of pull over the years with their union.
Yeah.
What's your favorite part of baseball, of the whole experience, Ronald?
Well, one thing it's definitely not, and many people criticize me for it, is I don't like to go to the ball games a lot. What I like to do is I like to observe every game on television, newspaper, and everything, to see what unique trivia items and stats the game produces. Almost every day, something happens unique. This guy's story, for example. The first guy to hit 2 home runs in a game in his first Major League game when it was on opening day. Then the first guy to hit 6 homers in his 4 Major League games. I look at each game for stats and trivia items. And if there's a question, if somebody does something, I want to know if somebody did it before. If it's not readily available, I'll do a little bit of digging.
Right.
Now the box scores going back to 1913 are all on the Internet, so that makes it all very easy. You used to have to go to Cooperstown and do all kinds of things. So there's still problems from the 19th century and before that, but I'm interested in the day-by-day following of the stats and trivia that come forward. Like the questions I ask on my page, I ask which 5 guys did this, which guys did this, and I focus on stats and also awards. Like I asked which 10 shortstops. I recently asked which 10 shortstops won the batting title, or which catchers won the MVP. Questions like that. I try to link events with today with somebody else, but not all these things deal with today. Very very often, maybe 6 guys did something, but it was all before the war. But anyway, I like the stats and the trivia regarding the game in a historical sense.
Your neighborhood is Rain Man. I'm serious. I mean this is a compliment. I mean, does your brain work like that, where you feel like you just have something that we mortals don't have?
I was born with unusual skills, coordination, concentration, other things like that, below average. I couldn't drive a car. My concentration, my coordination is often slower on the computer than the average person, but I have a great memory. So I had to deal with what I had. But also, I had great mathematical skill and interest. That helped.
Right.
And so I have to try to maximize my strengths. But anyway, when I was a kid,
we would call you really a baseball statistical savant. Is that an accurate description of you?
That's perfect.
I've been called a trivia expert, a trivia, a professor. I've been doing all kinds of nicknames with that. But anyway,
I already have a title for this show. It's going to be Baseball Trivia is Not Trivial.
Nice.
1986, I was interviewed by the Chicago Tribune before a convention. They expected me, I competed in the quizzes in those days. They expected me to win the quiz. The quiz, I think, was given 12 o'clock at night, and I lost by a question. I was half asleep at the time. But because of my reputation in trivia, they featured me. They called me the king of trivia, the king of stats, the genius, and all that. So they spoke about my history, that I won a lot of contests, I read a lot of things. But anyway, every day I'm looking at what happens. The MLB network and also the MLB website have helped me a lot, and also other things, other Sabre members. I look at what stats have done, and then at the end of the year, I send a list to Lyle Spatz. He's the head of the Sabre Records Committee, and he incorporates them into his list. So they miss hardly anything of importance because I'm coming up with things in many cases that nobody else is coming up with.
Right. Do you ever wake up in the morning sometimes? I mean, you say that you want to come up with two trivial things. Do you ever wake up and you have this cold realization that the intangible things in baseball are so much more important than the stats? Does that ever hit you? And do you ever get cold sweats over that?
No, I don't. I basically consider myself a numbers man. I let other people worry about the intangibles. I talk sometimes about the intangibles too, but I don't ask technical questions usually about fastballs. It's interesting. I asked today a question. One team in the 1940s had 4 knuckleball pitchers in the rotation. So in some ways a little outside of what I sometimes ask because it doesn't maybe it is trivia, but it deals with the way they pitch. So one guy named the 4, but it looked like he looked up a couple of them because he took about an hour to get the last 2.
Oh, okay. Well, I won't look up anything, but I'll go. Was it the Giants with Dummy Hoy and those guys? And
I said in the 1940s.
Well, Hubble played in the 40s.
You said Dummy Hoy. Hoy played at the turn of the century. His career ended in 1904.
There were 3 guys that played on the Giants in 43. Schellenbach was one. Hubble was another, and I thought it was Dummy Hoy, but not. Hey, look, I just want to put something in here. You talked about who should be in the Hall of Fame, and I'll say this every day. The most deserving individual who's not in the Hall of Fame is Marvin Miller. Do you agree with me?
The funny thing is I don't particularly like him because I thought he was a bit of a troublemaker. But most people who like him say he's the one who should be in the most. I'm not a particular advocate for him. I mentioned to you Hodges.
I don't know him to like him or not, but I know him to like him for what he did for the Union. I'm a Union guy in life, the Union type mentality, and notwithstanding how the Union has been complicit with this steroidal mess.
The funny thing is, he was once 1 vote short.
Okay, really?
Hodges was once 1 vote short, and let me tell you the circumstances. Ted Williams headed the committee that year, and Campanella was dying, and I was on the committee. He wanted to cast his vote by telephone, so it was Ted Williams' decision. Didn't accept the vote by mail. Hodges missed by that 1 vote. And then they stacked the committee of anti-Hodges people. Ted Williams directly blocks Hodges from the Hall of Fame, and that's not something I'm making up. It's something that's well known. It's well documented. It's been in several books, several radio shows. But now the committee is not picking anybody, and they're going by these crazy sabermetric formulas, which don't favor Hodges because a lot of what Hodges did was intangibles and other things which are not in the stats. So Hodges should have made the Hall of Fame in the 80s or the 90s. He didn't do it. And now, unless there's a sudden burst of common sense, people ask me, do I think Hodges will ever make it? So I said, probably after we're all dead. Maybe 20, 30 years from now, he'll make it, and hardly any of us are going to be around to see it. And it's ridiculous. His widow is 90. Well, actually, his widow's going to turn 90 in September.
I hate to end the show on such an up note like that. After we're dead. But you know what? This will be on YouTube after we're dead. this interview will. For all of us, we are, Timmy and I, on a weekly basis, and you're adding to it, putting stuff down for posterity so people could look back and see.
Well, some of my facts I give in the trivia questions, I ask which players died at a certain time or committed suicide. Today somebody beat me to it. The 4 knuckleballers who pitched on the same team, one of them committed suicide. So I don't know if I was even going to mention it today, but somebody mentioned it first, so I confirmed it. The 4 were the 1945 Washington Senators. Dutch Leonard was the best known. There was Roger Wolf, there was Mickey Hafner, and there was Johnny Niggling. Niggling eventually committed suicide. But then I mentioned Niggling was known for something else. DiMaggio hit safely in 72 out of 73 games. So in the 74th game, Niggling stopped him.
Interesting.
I always come up with the extra fact, which a few people don't like because they think I'm trying to show myself that I'm smart. But if people know already for a half century that I'm smart, I don't have to prove it. I'm enlightening people, the generations, young generations of people about baseball, and they very much appreciate it.
Yeah, well,
I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, I'm very grateful for this opportunity, Ron.
I want to mention something about SABR. They discovered a few years ago the average age of a SABR member was 60. So now they're going to college campuses to recruit younger people with some success.
Yeah.
That's
the only thing that I'm going to take away from this, other than the vast amount of information that I've already been given, is I would like you to make sure that it is Tom Haller that hit the first home run off of Whitey Ford in the World Series.
That I could look up, but not tonight because I'm in one apartment and the books are in my other apartment around the corner. I can look it up tomorrow.
Can I tell you not to have to bother to look this one up? I'm just.
If you're sure of it, I don't have to. The only reason I'm confident. The only reason I'm confident that is accurate is my dad told me that himself. Otherwise, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
And your dad was not.
I would say he's probably right.
You're not. He's probably right. I'm guessing he's right. His dad wasn't a braggart. I know that.
The one homer I remember of Whitey Ford by a left-handed batter was by Johnny Roseborough in 1963. But that would have been the year after the '62 World Series. So. Even with Roseborough's homer, if Haller homered in '62, Haller would have preceded it. But I know I've read that Duke Snyder did it, but I never looked it up. But a lot of these things I've read are not so. I mean, it's Snyder homer or Ford, but I could easily check that tomorrow, not today.
All right.
That's great.
The books are
what a great show.
Ronald, I hope you had a good time.
I expected the show would be different because when you said you were going to have trivia questions, I maybe jotted down about 10, 15, 20 questions in case you wanted the questions. Maybe we could do another trivia questions another time.
Ronald, I don't know when you come up for air and when you listen to this, I've asked you, hit us with a couple of trivia questions about the Bay Area, if you would.
All right, what pitcher won the All-Star game for both leagues?
Vida Blue.
Vida Blue is correct. You know, he did it once with the Giants, once with the who were the two men who played for the San Francisco Giants? Well, actually, the New York Giants, the San Francisco Giants, and the New York Mets, all three. One is
Willie Mays.
Yes, that's the
Willie Mays.
The other one is hard.
Wes Westrom.
No,
Wes didn't play. He was a coach. Wes had been retired.
Wes didn't even play for the San Francisco Giants. His last year was 57 with the New York Giants.
Okay. Hey, that was a good guess. You got to give me a little credit for that. That was a good guess.
That was a good guess. Hit me with
Western even managed the Mets. Western managed the Mets, and he managed the Giants, but I'm talking about, he never managed the New York Western, but there's a guy who played for the New York Giants, the San Francisco Giants, and the New York Mets, other than Mays, who was...
Joey Malfitano.
Malfitano's not right.
Never played with the Mets. No.
I'll give you a clue. This was an infielder, a middle infielder.
A middle...
Money Irving.
No.
Charlie Neal, I would have said for a second there, but that's the Dodgers.
It wasn't Chuck Hiller.
No.
Angel or Pagan. Jose Pagan.
No.
Well, you stumped it.
The man who did it was not really famous for any of these teams. He just played.
He just played. Was it? Geez, I'm thinking a guy.
Still alive, I might add, amazingly.
Who came over from? He had to play with the New York Giants and the San Francisco Giants. Am I right?
Yeah, and then he played for the New York Mets. What?
Eddie Bressoud.
Bressoud is the man. Good.
Whoa.
Although if you got it on my trivia page, it would have said you get an asterisk because you named a few wrong guys first.
And you said he wasn't very good with any of those three teams. He wasn't.
With the Mets, he hit a few three-run homers, but other than that, he wasn't very good, right?
But he was pretty good with the Boston Red Sox. He gave the Red Sox 3 or 4 good years where they had guys like Billy Consolo before that, and he did very well.
He was lucky, though. Let me tell you why. When the Mets released him and he thought his career was over, the Cardinals took him as a utility infielder. He almost never played, but they won the World Series that year, so he got himself a ring.
Good for him. You know, I had the good fortune and blessing to have lunch with him at Jimmy Davenport's memorial service a few weeks back, and Eddie is still doing great, sharp as a tack, and just a beautiful person.
He would be a great guest, Jim. That would be terrific sometime.
Yeah, one thing it's easy to know usually is when a ball player dies, there's so many people tracking that, and when the people track it, many of them contact me directly that it's very rare that a ball player dies that it's not picked up. The oldest living ball player was Mike Sandlock, who was 100 years old. He just died last week. He never played for the Giants though. He played for the Pirates and he played for the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Right.
Nondescript ball player, but he played.
He played. He made the majors. He played minor league ball. He played. That's something. Let me tell you.
Hey, the only living player. He once played in the Bay Area in the minors. This next guy, the only living player who played in the 1930s in the major leagues who's still living. He played in the Bay Area in the minors. There's one 98 years old. He's the only living player from the 1930s who's living. He's a Hall of Famer.
Did he play for the San Francisco Seals?
Yes.
Whoa.
He's a Hall of Famer.
It's not Lefty O'Doul.
No, Lefty's gone.
Yeah.
One guy who played in the 1930s living.
And he's still living.
98 years old. Right.
Boy, you got me.
Got me on that one, boy. I'll tell you.
Bobby Doerr.
Oh, Bobby Doerr. Oh, man.
Yes.
He's the only guy from the 30s who's lived. And the last guy who was living from the 1920s was Al Lopez, who was also a Hall of Famer. He died in 2005. Al Lopez, he was 97. So Bobby Doerr's 98.
Well,
Al Lopez managed that 59.
The White Sox. Yep.
Al Lopez managed the 59 White Sox. Doerr was never a manager. He was just a coach and everything. But Doerr is still living.
Yeah, he was a good
at 98.
And I remember that Tony Cuccinello was the third base coach for that White Sox team. That was a fun team to play in sim leagues.
Ray Barries was a coach.
Did you guys ever play board games as kids? Did you, Timmy?
Never. I was never interested in that because I'm always down to earth. So I'm not into fictional type things. People ask me even to play those games today on the internet, but my field basically is limited.
Okay.
I'm a stats and trivia man. Every day I wake up, I watch the ball games. I look for something unique that happened that never happened before, or the ties a record, and I jot it down. And for each individual season, I send it to Lyle Spatz, and he puts it in his newsletter. That's why his newsletter is so popular, because of my stuff. It's on the Sabre website every year around Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So I got a whole lot of stuff already this year. This week, the Cardinals, for example, the first team ever to get 3 pinch hit homers in the same game.
Right.
So I keep getting these little things, and some people resent it.
You got Bumgarner's second home run tab tonight. He hit a home run tonight again.
Unaware of that. I don't know what would happen today yet until I read tomorrow's newspaper.
Both the Giants and the Mets came up short. So Tim and I have little tears in our eye before we go.
Yeah, we're in mourning right now.
I saw something on the Internet when I left the library tonight that the Dodgers scored a run on the top of the 10th inning to lead 3-2. So I figure they probably won't beat the Giants.
Yeah, they did.
A run on the top of the 10th, right.
And I really don't want to have to relive that right now, Ron, if you don't mind.
I didn't bring that up. You did. I didn't even know Bumgarner.
Ronald, I won't say anything about Cespedes' 2-for-16 start. And
the Mets lost 1-0 tonight.
I know
that game finished right before I went on this phone conversation.
I know. We both went on, and
what a great show!
It was a great show. I enjoy everyone, Timmy. Ronald, I hope
you say I'll get a copy of the tape.
You will. I'll send you a link to the show, and you can play it.
Well, what do you mean a link? You can't send me an audio tape?
I will send you.
Because a link in the library, I'm not allowed to hear something with sound.
It's not a tape. It's what's called an MP3, and it's posted, and you're going to hear it, and you'll say to yourself, "I wonder why I haven't won an award by now." I bet you say that. Yeah.
Look, I'm not the only person who's saying this about me.
I know.
One woman got a major research award in Sabre because she videotaped a few conventions, and the award says baseball research, and she's never done any baseball research in her life. She's 60 years old, so she got an award, and me, who's been doing her research since I was old enough to walk, no award.
You know,
so I mean, it's not something that I'm just saying about myself.
Both our grandmothers, Ron Liebman, would have said, "A brachs to them."
Well, you're Jewish?
A little bit.
Some people resent me for that reason that I'm Jewish, and the people who are Jewish resent me that I'm not a strict observer. I'm only like a Reformed Jew. So I get it from both ends. That I'm Jewish, I'm not Jewish enough. Anyway,
hey, Ron, let me just tell you this.
I have a lot of fun following the baseball every day.
Timmy has talked to me enough. He's part Jewish at this
Yes,
point.
I am, and I have the nose to prove it. But I will tell you, I will say this. I'm going to close it with this. Ron,
Lou Boudreau hit his whole career that he was part Jewish. Lou Boudreau, the player and manager.
Well, he wasn't really. I think his father was Jewish, but not his mother or something like that.
I think his mother was Jewish, but he was estranged from his mother early in life.
Oh, okay. Well, sometimes you win, sometimes you win big. Listen, you guys are great. I'm going to end the show by just saying that I want everybody to keep your humor dry and your dreams wet. Is that a bad way to end the show?
No, but if you have me on again sometime, we should do it like I thought we were going to do it tonight. Where with some, I'll pose some trivia questions.
Oh, I think didn't you pose us 2 or 3 questions that were terrific?
I thought you meant that you wanted like at least 10 questions or something. Yeah, I posed you a couple, like the John Smoltz question, for example.
Give me a few more. We're right here.
I'll give you one more now.
Okay.
The first man who homered for the Giants, I was going to give you an extra clue. Okay, the extra clue, you'd get it. The first man who homered for the Giants in Candlestick Park, and the first man who homered in Candlestick Park for a visiting team, who was a former San Francisco Giant, even though it was 1960, he played for the Giants in 58 and 59. So 1960, a Giant and a former Giant. And both men weren't Giants for very long, but they did enough in their careers that most people remember them to some degree.
So if I said Willie Kirkland, would that be...
Kirkland is right for the Giants.
Kirkland is right?
He's the Giant. Now, the man who homered...
I get an award? I'm not going to get your award, am I?
No, the man who homered, first man who homered for the visiting team in 1960 had played for the Giants in 58 and 59, also an outfielder. But he was not that famous with the Giants or with the with this other team. He went to the American League and became somewhat famous there.
Was he
Daddy Wags? Was it Daddy Wags?
Leon Wagner is right. My clues helped you, yes. Wagner was the first man to homer in Candlestick Park, and the first Giant was Willie Kirkland.
Whoa.
In 1960.
You win, Ralph. You won.
I'm
a winner.
You won the award.
All right.
I told you, every day I wake up and I'm looking for stats and for trivia since I was a little kid, and I'll never get tired of this. If I live to be 100, I'm 71. If I live to be 100, I'll still be doing it. And the main person, besides the trivia page, the main thing I do with this is Lyle Spatz with his newsletter in November, with the baseball record set and tied during the year.
Well, you've gifted us with your presence here tonight.
If you're on Facebook, Timmy and I are both on Facebook, as is Ronald Liebman, and that's L-I-E.
I don't think you're a Facebook friend of mine, Tim, are you?
Not yet, but I will be here shortly.
You can either friend me or I'll friend you Monday. I'm not going to be on tomorrow.
Okay.
All right.
I usually take Sunday off from the internet.
All right.
So you'll be expecting that friendship on Monday, right?
I'll be expecting it on Monday. I have over 2,600 friends. A small core of people won't be friends with me because they think I make up stats or nonsense like that. But that's only a small group.
Right, this is podcast.
Shame on them. Shame on them. That's all.
Shame on them. They should not talk to. They should not talk to Ronald that way.
I told you I had a meeting with the Sabre Board of Directors, and I proved myself that all that is false last summer. So I was cleared by my organization, which might have eventually paved the way for an award, but not real soon, probably in a few years, maybe.
Yeah, after Willie Kirkland and Daddy Wags, you're going to get an award?
Well, you consider that easy or hard? I gave you clues.
You know what I like to do more than almost anything in the world is make Timmy laugh.
I gave you Ed Bressoud also, which you ultimately got when I gave you some clues like a middle infielder.
And I got Willie Kirkland and Daddy Wags. Daddy Wags was an angel at the end, one of my favorite ball players of all time. He was
an angel. He died a few years ago. He was about 69 or 70. He died a few years. With the Angels, he had some good years, right? He hit over 200 homers in his career. And Kirkland hit over 150. So they both had some decent years. Kirkland once had 3 home runs in a game. When he came up the fourth time, they asked him to... Kirkland hit 3 home runs in a game. When he came up the fourth time, they asked him to sacrifice. They should have let him swing away to try for a fourth homer, but they had him sacrifice.
Well, who knew? That's the manager. Who
was
that manager? Who was that manager?
Bertie Tabbets.
Okay, Jesus.
With Cleveland, right?
I'm not going to get one by you, so I won't even try. Thank you, guys. It's been a great show. I'm so delighted that we do.
So when will I get this link or whatever it is?
You'll be getting it by Wednesday of this week. You will, on your personal message on Facebook, you will get a link to the show. All you'll have to do is hit it, and all of a sudden you'll hear Tally Olson introducing us. Tally makes soap, glycerin soap. She's not only the kingpin of my life, she's the show. She's the kingpin of soap making. She makes glycerin soap, hemp-based. This smells like that. That smells like this. I'm doing Jackie Mason for Tally. He's still alive. Number 47, Jackie Mason. Thank you, guys. I'm silly.
Thanks, Ralph. Had a great time. Be well, everyone.
Fun, Timmy?
All right, it was nice speaking to you, and maybe another time we'll do it when I ask you a bigger number of trivia questions.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm going to be ready, and if you can stump me, I'll give you an award. How's that sound?
Good. Ralph, by the way, you probably read a lot of my questions, haven't you, on the page, or you haven't?
I have read a lot of your questions, Timmy. Ron, I don't remember them all offhand.
And there were good ones from other people also.
The thing I'm impressed with most about you, Ronald, is that you are a fellow alum of Newtown High School in Queens, New York.
And you are also Ralph, yes. You say it.
I was a super senior at Newtown High School, and we had many, many baseball pools in the cafeteria.
Well, let me tell you quickly how I got into Newtown High School. I lived in the Ridgewood section of Brooklyn, and there were two high schools nearby.
Which one?
One of them was Bushwick High School. Right. My family didn't want me to go there because they said there were too many Negroes. The other one was Grover Cleveland High School. My family didn't want me to go there because there was swimming on the agenda. So to get into a school outside the district, I had to pass a test for it. So I passed the test to get into Newtown. So that's how I wound up in Newtown, in Elmhurst, where when I was in the Ridgewood section of Brooklyn, because my parents didn't want me to go to Bushwick or Grover Cleveland for the reasons I gave.
Ron, you had to pass a test to get into Newtown. In my day, we didn't even have to pass a test to get out of Newtown. So things went down. See, there I go again, making Tim.
I was about 20th. I was about 20th in a class of 900 students.
Of course you were.
But when I went to college, I had a little more trouble because there was so many classes and so much homework and so many things. There I was more or less just a C or C+ student. I wasn't outstanding in college. Before college, I was outstanding.
Well, the low bar at Newtown will serve you well in life. Let me tell you that, young man. You had that early success, and you have the memories of that. But after that, in real life, Newtown High School isn't exactly Northwestern University. You'll find, or may have found, I've found.
The college I went to is one of the top 25 in the country, Queens College.
Oh, yes.
A couple of blocks from my home, and I still use their library.
Well, they really are a great institution, Queens College in New York. Thank you, guys, again. I'm going to give you one trivia question, Ronald. How long will it take me to push the button to get this thing to sign off? Will it be 7 seconds, or will I stumble?
3 seconds. Wrong button. Goodbye, everybody. 3 seconds.
All right, take care.
Tim's
Bye now.
got the under. Tim's got the under. We're out of here, guys. Thank you very, very much. See what I mean?